Welcome back to the Figure Kit Garage, fellow resin heads and kit builders. Brent Krug back out in the garage with a new work in progress tutorial series. The kit you see in front of you on the bench is the Millicent Patrick 1/4 scale tribute bust sculpted by Jeff Yeager, produced by Typhon Studios. In this video series, I'm going to concentrate on how I'm going to paint up this beautiful kit. I've already taken the liberty of doing all the prep work, gluing the right arm and getting the seam lines puttied, as well as getting her pre-primed and getting the left arm glued on and puttied as well. You do notice that I have her blocked out in different colors of Stynylrez primer. That's because I wanted to get an idea of how this is going to look when I get it done. My skin tones that I'm going to begin with is a little bit of a lengthy process. I'm going to try to get it all in one shot. But the skin tone technique that I use is not the same one that everybody does. This one I kind of developed on my own, and it started with the Charles Xavier bust from Gilman Productions, and I've used it to great effect on him, as well as the Chris Reeve tribute bust, also from Gilman Productions, as well as the R.J. McCready from Gilman Productions. It renders the skin tones in a very unique way. It brings a little bit more life into them. I'm going to be using a wide range of paints, everything from these paints from Createx. This is the Lifelines Natural Series, to Badger Minotaur, Folk Art, Delta Ceramcoat, Garage Kits US, Vallejo, Comart Medea, and this line of paints from the Army Painter, which I have found out these are a wonderful series of paints. They have a great amount of pigment to them, as well as Green Stuff World. So to begin this off, I'm going to get the base coat of Lifeline's Deep Natural Skin Tone airbrushed onto her, and this is going to be one of the few times that you will see me use an airbrush with her skin tones. Now my mixture of paint to reducer, and I use reducer through the airbrush instead of airbrush thinner. It's kind of a crapshoot a little bit. I try to get a 5% mixture of reducer to paint to get an even flow. It also helps with paint adhesion, as well as reducing the paint down just as far as I need it to. So I'm going to set her off to the side. We'll get the right hand airbrush first. Make sure this. Got my compressor set at about 28 psi. And the compressor will go on and off during the video, so I apologize for the noise that it'll create. As well, I'm going to be using pan pastels for a lot of the shadows and highlights to her skin. Pan pastels I started using recently. I used them on the She-Hulk 3D printed kit, and I absolutely love how pigment rich they are. They go on very smooth. They blend really, really well with one another. And I'll go into a little bit more in depth on how I paint eyes. That was suggested by Brian Clark, most recently on the Model Club TV Hobby Hangout on Discord. And if you haven't been on their Discord server yet, go check it out. The Hobby Hangout is a lot of fun. Basic video talking more than anything else. Not necessarily about model kits, but life and everything in general. I've been on there several times with Scott Johansson. I've met Jamie Sy, Brian Clark, Scott Lookabill. Really wonderful people to hang out with, and I definitely want to say thank you to both Jason and Scott over at Model Club TV for supporting the channel, bringing the channel up every time they get the chance. They've been really supportive of me. I've been really supportive of them. I'm continue that. And yes, I'm one of the few people you'll see that does not use a hair dryer to dry down his paints. Set that off to the side. Now, I'm not worried about getting overspray on the blue Stynylrez Res primer that I used on her shirt, because eventually her skin will get masked off with liquid latex, and any masking and sealing that I do will be done off camera. Anything gloss, that'll be done pretty much dead last before the final reveal, because I'll be using a lot of flat coat on this lady. So I'm amazed I was able to even get this video series started with the amount of heat we've had out here in Southern California lately. Even though it's not humid, it was incredibly just straight, as Hudson from Aliens would put it. Yeah, man, but it's the dry heat. I think the highest we hit was about 113 degrees earlier in the week, and we're finally going to start dropping back down into the low 90s, high 80s. Thank God. It's just been absolutely miserable for about the last 9 days, give or take. As I said, I'm not overly worried about a lot of overspray at this moment. A lot of my skin tones are going to be handled by brush instead of airbrush, and once you see how I do my skin tones, you'll understand. I developed it pretty much out of necessity, trying to figure out how I was going to get Charles to look as he did in the film Logan. Racking my brain for well over a week trying to figure out how I was going to get it done, and then finally came up with it, and I absolutely love the way it looks. So I used to do all my skin tones by airbrush. Now I use my airbrush as a secondary tool. I guess after 32 years this month of doing this hobby, you I guess sometimes you have to learn things the hard way, but that's okay. I don't really mind. So I'll let that sit real quick and let that settle in. I'll clean my airbrush out. I started using Magic Sculpt for doing my putty work, getting all the seam lines done in, and I love the way the stuff works. I still use Epoxy Sculpt, but I decided to give the Magic Sculpt a try, and it seemed to work a lot better, although I will admit to anyone who wants to use Magic Sculpt, you may want to keep your hands and your tools moist, because it's like working with very sticky bubble gum. If you don't, it will get all over the place, even when you're trying to mix the two parts together. Put that on pause while I clean the airbrush out all the way. And while I'm letting that skin tone get completely dry, right around the 23rd of August, the Figure Kit Garage crossed the 500 subscriber mark. This is the first chance I've had on video to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for both myself and Virginia. Beginning this channel 4.5 years ago, April 18th, 2018. Whew. God, where did the time go? I guess time goes by when you're not paying attention. It's been a really, really wonderful ride, and I intend to go as far as I can with it. Thanks to you guys. We're sitting at 513 subscribers now, and who knows? See how fast we can hit 1,000. Anything's possible now. I wasn't sure if I would hit 500. Hell, I wasn't sure I was going to hit 100. To be brutally honest, I really wasn't. So now we're going to begin the long part of this series, and this is going to be the skin tones. And what I use for my skin tones brush wise is I started using one of these. This is a Deerfoot stipple brush that artists use to do bushes, trees, and whatnot on canvas. And it's become a really useful tool. That noise is my vortex mixer shaking up my paint in doing my skin tones. And I'm going to start off with Badger Minotaur's Scorching Red. I don't think you guys can see that. There we go. Three drops is all I'm using. No more. And I'm going to take some Vallejo airbrush thinner, and I'm going to over reduce this a lot. Whip that out. Get a paper towel for this. This process might seem really, really strange, but I have become so accustomed to doing it this way that I don't know if I could actually do it any other way. So just bear with me. Like I said, regardless of how long this takes, I'll show you guys how I do this. Now I'm going to start dabbing a lot of this off. And notice I have not sealed her skin, and there's a reason for that. What this is going to do, it's going to pretty much wet blend everything together. So a lot of that off of there. We'll start with the right hand so you guys can see this, and I'll zoom in a little bit. It almost looks like she's going to have a hell of a rash on her skin by the time I'm done with this. But this is going to add the red undertone to the skin. sure how well you guys can see that. Little reddish pink splotches on her skin. I'm just hitting this at random all over. There's no set pattern to this. I want to try and get all the fingers covered. A lot of people are going to think that I'm absolutely nuts for doing this, but it has worked to great effect. If you've seen any of the photos I posted of the previous kits that I mentioned, it really does help bring out the life in the skin quite a bit. I'll bring that up closer. She's got a really bad rash going on. I'll let that set off to the side. And we'll start on the face the exact same way. Now I started off with the deep natural skin tone, and the next layer of skin tone we're going to apply will be the light natural in the exact same way that I'm doing this. And you can actually use this technique for any color of skin. I did this with the Dale Cowan Incredible Hulk sculpted by Troy McDevitt. The She-Hulk 3D printed kit that I just recently finished. I wound up using about 7 different shades of green on her skin alone. And once it's all blended together, it looks really fantastic. I'm really happy with how she turned out. As you can see, little red patches of skin. Definitely want to get under the chin. I was hoping that gluing the right forearm would not get in, or left forearm, excuse me, would not get in the way of doing this. But it does just a little bit, but not really bad. I think the longest it's taken me to get the skin tone right where I wanted it was the Chris Reeve tribute, and that took me roughly about 6 hours worth of painting in this technique to get it absolutely correct. I'm hoping this will take a lot less time. I will be doing some freckling with about medium shades of brown, just to bring out depth in the skin. Yeah, this looks weird as all get out, but I tell you what, it does work very well. All of the Micromania Star Trek busts that I did for my sister Joy about a year or so ago, I did this exact same way, and every single one of them turned out. The two most nerve-wracking were Uhura and Sulu, which I'd never done African American or Asian skin tones before in my life, and they turned out exceptionally well. Very patchy looking. After a while, it will make sense. hoping to have this video series finished up before the first week of October, as Virginia and I will be taking a trip back to the state of Virginia for her father's memorial service, who sadly we lost her dad on the 1st of August. So we will be flying out there, so I'm hoping to have this done. If not, I will finish it up when I get back. But that is the beginning of the skin tone on both the right hand and the head. Now the underside of the creature's mask does have her part of her left hand showing, and I will probably just base coat that with a flesh tone and not do a whole lot else, because you're not really going to see a whole lot of that at all. So I'll let that sit, and I'll break out my Lifelines Natural. Apologize for the noise. These Vortex mixers, if you guys haven't gotten one of these, they are so worth the expense. Be sitting there handshaking a bottle of paint for 5 minutes just to get it loosened up. 1 or 2 minutes on a Vortex mixer and your paint's pretty much good to go. So now we're going to break out the Lifelines Natural. This does come out rather thick. Sorry about the bump. Over reduce that. Now we begin again on the right hand with Lifelines Natural. I'm going very lightly over this. It will reactivate the red a little bit, but it's also going to push that red further underneath and fade it back. That will also start to lighten up that deep natural skin tone that I base coated her skin with. And now that red patchiness is not so prominent. It's actually just starting to fade back underneath. It's just what I want it to do. At some point I will seal this off camera, and that's one of the reasons why I don't seal with every layer, because I want to get multiple layers done, let it seal, let all the paint colors melt together, and it blends in perfectly. So, whoops. You see that's kind of faded that red down a lot, which is exactly what I want it to do. And this actually does leave a kind of texture with these brushes in the skin, which gives a really good breakup. It's kind of like doing a wash without being a wash in a lot of ways. And it's starting to fade that red back quite a bit. Well, that red is still a little bit prominent. The further I go, the further it'll fade it back. Hope everybody had a safe Labor Day weekend. I unfortunately had to work on Labor Day. But that wonderful time and a half holiday pay is gonna look nice in the end. I can't deny that. Still is a little bit warm out here, but that's all right. As you can tell, it's starting to lighten that red up quite a bit. It's almost become a pinkish flesh red. It blends the colors back very nicely. It's basically a wet blend. If there are any hard edges on the red that I applied, it'll blend those out. I imagine a lot of you are going to watch this and go, my God, why does it take so long to do skin tones on a kit? If you want something to look good, you got to work for it. Never ever take the quick and easy path. Because if you do, it doesn't always look the best. So, that is layer round 1 of the natural skin tone. It has faded that red back quite a bit. Looks really good. Smell. I almost did not get to do this because a bottle of super glue bust and leak all over my paint drawer storage, or paint storage drawer, excuse me, and as I started peeling bottles of glue off, I started peeling pieces of plastic off with it. So I nearly lost, in all actuality, I think I lost 6 bottles of paint, but I could have lost nearly 30 with that little incident. Thank God I had the debonder from Satellite City, which worked out really, really well. Thank God, because that could have gotten ugly. So while I'm letting that settle, I'm going to go ahead and just brush paint the fossilized creature hand real quick. There's a seam line that I missed. And one of the little tools that I use to get seam lines out of hair, which there were just very minor ones, this handy dandy little item. And this is from a website called The Complete Sculptor. I'll put the link down below. This is one of the best tools I've ever seen for getting seam lines out of hair. Because all you have to do is scrape along the seam line that's down in the hair crevice, and it gets it out without any problem whatsoever. I believe this was $15, maybe a little bit less than that. I'll have to look up if I'm wrong. I'm wrong. But for those of you that hate getting seam lines out of hair, this little beauty is well worth the price, and I can't recommend it enough. It says Sculpture Depot 01 on it, but it's from The Complete Sculptor. Their website, it's still available. I looked it up the other night, and they still had everything in stock. I'm just going to brush paint this stuff on. Thanks. Not what you want to see when you shake up a bottle of primer. But it's alright. It's removable. And just a offhanded side note, condolences to the folks living over in the UK, Ireland, and Scotland. I don't know politics of the British government or a lot of the British countries, but I want to extend condolences on the loss of Queen Elizabeth. Longest reigning monarch in England's history, 70 years. God, that's a run, to say the least. That's a hell of a run. It's unreal to think how many U.S. presidents she's met since 1952 when she took over, and even before that. Before her husband passed. But it's an unbelievable feat to be the head of a country for 7 decades. You know, that's a big bucket of wind right there. That's something I'll never see again in my lifetime, probably, or anybody. Just an unbelievable lady. So, condolences to those in the UK on the loss of the Queen Mother. Well, it's actually quiet out there for once. No fireworks. People drag racing behind the house. I better enjoy this while it lasts. Trying to keep this on camera for you guys, but it's just a little bit of base primering, nothing more. And yeah, it seems kind of long drawn out to do it by brush painting it on, but Steiner Wrist primer goes good by brush or airbrush. It settles really well. I don't think I've used rattle can primer on anything in Lord knows how long, ever since this stuff came out. Jeff definitely outdid himself with the sculpting on this piece. As he does with just about everything else that he sculpts. Turns out absolutely amazing. Castings were really beautiful. Minor cleanup, but that was to be expected. And that is the primer coat on the fossilized hand. Nothing real outrageous there. So now we will begin again on the skin tone, and for that some drink here. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is come in with one more round of the natural skin tone on both the hand and the head. This will be even more random than it was before. It's going to continue to push that red back up underneath the skin. Keep her in camera. One reason why I like these Lifelines paints is they go on semi-transparent. Although a lot of times they will dry with a little bit of a gloss shine to them. Usually doesn't get in the way or affect how I do things. I'm starting to fade that red back even more. Still has that patchy look, but that will fade out. Start to fade that back really nicely. It's hard to tell what Millicent Patrick's skin tone actually was. Pretty much all the photos, I think, except for a few that have surfaced recently, were all in black and white. I think there's only one color photo of her on set with the creature outfit and her looking at the head sculpt which she created. So now I'm going to take this color here. This is Kamart Medea's Riojas Vein Flesh. Yeah, you heard the name right. This was a, I guess this was a collaboration between Kamart Medea and painter Steve Riojas. Developed different, whoops, sorry about the camera bump. Different monster skin colors for Kamart Medea, and it was released in a set that we picked up from Coast Airbrush. And this is a really good vein color. What I'm going to do with this, though, is I'm going to thin this down a lot. I'm going to get that blue-green under the skin look. Where's my brush? There it is. Too many damn brushes in this garage. But I think most people would agree you can never have too many brushes for this hobby. And what I'm going to do, I'll move her out of the way while I do this. I'm going to freckle this very lightly onto the skin. I don't want to go too heavy with it. Any heavy spots that you have, just dab them with your finger or cotton swab dipped in water. Maybe a little bit hard to see on camera, but you can see very little bluish green splotches. And do the same thing with her face. Actually, I think I'm getting some of this on myself. I don't need more color. At least I don't think so. And dig a little bit on the white of her coat, but that's okay. That's going to get painted over anyway, so I'm not going to lament over that. And now she has little bluish green dots. I'll let those settle. I'll go back over that again with the natural. And blend that back. mix up some natural skin tone for the airbrush. So I will mist a little bit of this over it to blend it back. It won't be a whole heck of a lot. It's actually turning out very well so far. If I have to do this extended wise for the video series, I'll probably edit them both together or may just make a two-parter out of it. Let's see how things go. It doesn't look too bad so far. Red's actually pushed back quite a lot. Going with another layer of natural, and then going with a shade of brown and do the same freckling style on her skin. It's a lot of back and forth with skin tones. It's always a pain in the butt, unfortunately, but necessary evil. Big necessary evil. If you want it to look good, never ever do it quick. So we'll let that sit. And we'll come back and get the next layer of natural skin tone on. Alright, we are back. Take a brief pause temporarily. Now we're going to begin with the next color for the flesh tones on Millicent Patrick. And this is another Comart Videa paint that I'm using. Another one of the Riojas Monster colors. It's called Riojas Green Flesh. It's more of a yellow tone than actual green. I'll do the same thing with it that I did with, excuse me, the green flesh tone. And I've allowed the freckles from the vein blue green to dry down a lot. That should be more than enough. Thin that down. This won't actually turn her skin green. It has, like I said, it has more of a yellowish tone to it. It won't make her look like she's got jaundice at all, but it'll punch up the color in the skin a little bit. And it'll keep fading that red back. First helicopter I've heard all night. Just when I got used to the peace and quiet, here we go again. Like I said earlier, with this technique, it takes a while, but once the colors start blending together, it'll actually really come together quite nicely. Yeah, I could have used the sideshow method, or so they call it, about washing over with red, yellow, and blue and get a more realistic effect on the skin tone. I don't know if I'm absolutely 100% sold on that. For anybody that's tried it, you know, let me know if it's worked for you. If it has, great. If it has its drawbacks, which I'm sure it does, you know, let me know that too. Don't be afraid to comment. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I'll answer them as soon as I can. As you can tell, that red is getting pushed back even further thanks to the color that I'm using now. Even some of the blue is starting to fade back a little bit. Allowing that to dry the way that I did helps that process along. Oops. Trying to keep this in camera so you guys can see what I'm doing. I want to make sure she has a very realistic skin tone by the time I'm done with her. That was the one thing about doing the Charles that I really screwed up on when I first did this technique, was I actually forgot to get behind the ears. So I had to go back in and blend that up as best I could. But he turned out about as good as I could get him. So now that red's faded back even more. I'll go in with the right hand and do the exact same thing. Now use that same vein blue-green color on the veins in her hand. So let that sit for just a minute or two. Excuse me. Yeah, it's definitely headed in the right direction. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this with, I'm going to freckle some quicksand brown on top of that, and that'll be a really, really light freckling as well. Shake up that. And get that as ultra thin as I can possibly get. I don't want a whole lot of paint, more so than the thinner. I want this to be almost transparent instead of semi-transparent or even opaque. I want to get that as thin as I can get it. This brown is going to be really hard to see since it is very, very light. It should add a decent texture to the skin, make it look even more real. It's probably not easy to see. Very, very minor brown freckling on the skin. That once that's dry, that'll get pushed back with the light natural skin tone, excuse me. You can't actually overdo this and really get it muddy. If you do that, you can just take a Q-tip with some thinner or water and remove whatever you don't like. Moderate freckling like that. I'll bring a depth and detail to the skin that you normally wouldn't get. So we'll let that sit for a few minutes, let those dry, and go back in with the next layer of natural skin tone. Other than that, she's really starting to come along nicely. I don't want to do her too dark, but I don't want to do her skin tones too pale either. So find a nice little in-between happy medium and see how that turns out. So we'll be right back. Okay. While off camera, I decided to go ahead and seal her with Krylon Matte. Now that that's dried off, go back in with the next round of natural flesh tone. Try not to smear it as much as I possibly can. Starting to layer in very nicely. Yeah, with the camera you could definitely see all the freckling details. When you pull it back away from the camera and you just sit there and look at it from a slight distance, you can't see any of it, so it blends in quite nicely with the naked eye. Though you can still see it, it's going to become more and more faded as I keep doing layers of the natural skin tone. Painting that string of pearls around her neck's going to be a real blast. Definitely have to have the magnifiers on for that one. But that'll probably be one of the last things I do on this, because that'll have to be glossed over regardless. Now she does still have a little bit of redness to her skin, but that's okay. That'll fade back more and more. The more I keep stippling this in, the better it fades it back, so she won't look like she had measles or chicken pox, or even a really bad poison ivy run-in. This will fade it back quite nicely. And I'll use that scorching red again for washes on her skin later on. Yeah, that's really starting to look good. I'm liking the way that's going. working out better on camera than I thought. There have been times when I've had to restart an entire skin tone project all over again because things went absolutely south. But it is only paint. You can start over and make it better. For anybody that's new to this hobby or has been in this hobby for quite a long time, it's kind of the golden rule. It's only paint. It's not the end of the world. That will get better layer after layer. Just a constant working it back and forth that you have to do to get everything to look good. I think the devil of this whole thing is going to be doing that coat with the cave base. That's going to be that's going to be fun to do. But I plan on blending the cave part into the coat the right way to make it look really good. I need to reprimer that little spot on her coat. So now we'll come back in with the yellow flesh tone or green flesh tone. Very lightly. Starting to turn out fairly nice. Might be hard to see on camera. Starting to come out really, really nice. Really happy with the way this is working out. Has a bit of warmth to it. It's not too over red. Still kind of see a little bit of the freckling in there, but it's starting to fade back a little. Like it's under the skin, which is exactly what we want, because up close and personal, you're really not going to see this, very well with the naked eye. That's exactly what we want. So right hand turning out quite nicely. So let that sit. I probably won't have to use the green flesh tone again. This is all finally starting to come together the right way. Excuse me. I actually had somebody earlier tonight ask me if I've ever painted anything on camera that I've reviewed. The only thing I've done a work in progress video on was the Punisher Hellbent on Death. I was pretty pleased with that video series right up until the very final video of doing the shotgun shells and the Magnum cartridges. I lost that entire video file. It got corrupted somehow. I'm not exactly sure how to this day still. And I was never ever able to put that up, and I couldn't reshoot it. So It did fairly well, not as well as I would have liked. I hope this one does a lot better. Try not to be so boring. Our skin's turning out really, really well. I am really, really satisfied with how this is starting to look. I'm going to have to break this up into 2 parts, and if I do, that is okay. Trying to get it all in one shot is not necessarily a requirement. It was an idea. Never said it was a good one. Starting to come along very, very well. See the freckling underneath, the way the layering's beginning to happen. It's all tying together really, really well. Damn, I'm actually starting to be a little bit surprised myself, to be honest. And for anyone out there who is interested in the history of this lovely lady, I highly recommend a book by the name of The Lady from the Black Lagoon by Mallory O'Meara. A really, really wonderful read, or if you have Audible, I cannot recommend that highly enough. Tying together very nicely. That's it for a few minutes. Come back and we'll do another layer. Alright, giving her time to dry. Looking really, really good. So going with one more layer of the natural skin tone. All that red patchiness has all but completely faded, although you can still see the red in the skin. It's no longer predominant like it was before when I first did it, which is exactly the direction we want to go in. burp turned out on audio, I do apologize for that. I do plan on doing her hair in a dark auburn brown color, although I'm not exactly sure what her true hair color was. That's how I kind of imagine her. So I think that'll look really good on her. Coming along quite beautifully. Very, very pleased with how this is turning out. Still see some of the freckling in the skin, but human skin is translucent, so that's going to happen. I will give a very light mist coat of the natural flesh tone through the airbrush, and then flat seal it. And it will be a very light mist coat. It's not going to be really heavy. I hope I have not been too boring. I'm trying to do less talking and more working. Let's see how that looks with light hitting it directly. Oh yeah. I'm really liking how this is turning out. Excuse me. Just trying to keep everything in camera view as one of the things I'm trying to do more than anything else, since I don't always film what I paint. It's a little unnerving, but I'm getting used to it. It's starting to come out incredibly well. And very lifelike, and it will get better. So now do a very gentle mist of the natural through the airbrush. It's thinned down quite a bit, so it won't go on very thick. And doesn't necessarily erase everything I've done. Help blend it back even further. Oops. There we go. Yeah, that works out just right. Move her out of the way. And I'll do a mist coat after I do the shadows to push those back. Pushes all that back underneath even further. Once that dries, I'll flat seal it. And then I'll probably stop this video for the night. And we'll pick it back up tomorrow for part 2, which will be doing the veining, adding some washes, getting the shadows and highlights with pastels added in. Clean this airbrush out. We'll be right back. Alright, airbrush is cleaned out. That's the result we have from tonight's work. A lot of life in that skin, but a lot more to go. Like I said, skin tones are not meant to be done quick. If you want them to look right, take your time. And it'll turn out absolutely perfect. That is going to be the end of part 1 of the Millicent Patrick Work in Progress series. First round of skin tones is complete. And tomorrow we'll concentrate on shadows, highlights with pastels, getting the flesh tones blended back even more, and then concentrate on getting her eyebrows blocked in, and a whole lot more. So if you like this video, please like, share, subscribe. This has been the Figure Kit Garage and part 1 of Millicent Patrick, Creature from the Black Lagoon by Typhon Studios. Everybody stay happy, stay healthy, stay safe. Build a kit.